It's easy to go through your day and not really think twice about what's in the stuff around us.
Mm,
But we're surrounded by chemicals, and, well, some might be impacting our health more than we realize.
absolutely.
And you're here because you want to get informed quickly, but properly, right? Cut through the noise. So let's do that.
Yeah, let's dive in. Today we're tackling phthalates. They're a group of chemicals that are honestly surprisingly widespread.
Okay, phthalates. I've heard of them.
Yeah, you find them in food packaging, personal care products, loads of things. Our mission today is really to understand this potential link between phthalates and heart disease.
How strong is that link?
Exactly. How credible is it? Where are we getting exposed every day? How do they actually harm us, biologically speaking? And, what can we realistically do?
Right, prevention and maybe regulation too.
Precisely. We've looked at scientific reviews, health reports, news articles, and even, interestingly, a Reddit comment from a polymer engineer.
Oh, cool. Okay, so let's start with that big study getting attention. The one linking phthalates to heart disease deaths globally.
Yeah, that one made some waves. It focused on one specific phthalate, DEHP.
DEHP.
And the study estimated it might have played a part in over 356,000 deaths worldwide back in 2018.
Wow. That's a huge number. How seriously should we take a claim like that?
Well, the scale is what's really striking. The researchers from NYU Grossman School of Medicine, they estimated about 13%.
13%?
Yeah, 13% of cardiovascular deaths in people aged 55 to 64 globally could potentially be linked to this DEHP exposure.
So more than 1 in 10 deaths in that age group.
That's the estimate. And they pointed to regions like the Middle East, South Asia, East Asia, the Pacific, saying they carried about 75% of that burden.
75% in those areas.
India, specifically, had a really high number, over 103,000 linked deaths. The researchers suggested, a possible link to booming plastics industries there, lots of PVC use.
Okay, but is this totally new, or does it build on older research?
It definitely builds. It's not out of the blue. Previous studies, particularly in the US, had already suggested links between phthalates and heart problems, even premature deaths in older Americans. This study just adds a big global piece to the puzzle.
Got it. Sobering stuff. But like you said, it's DEHP specifically in that study. And it's not like all plastics are the same, right? That Reddit comment you mentioned?
Exactly. That's a really important nuance. This polymer engineer pointed out DEHP is mainly used to make PVC flexible.
Flexible PVC, like bendy stuff.
Yeah. Not the hard, rigid plastics you see in, say, lots of food containers.
Yeah.
Those rigid ones likely don't have much DEHP, if any.
Okay, that's useful.
And they also mentioned that the EU has cracked down quite hard on DEHP.
Regulations.
Yeah, so its use is down, especially in medical devices, though there are still some exceptions, temporary ones. But for food containers, you might still find it in flexible bits, like seals, maybe some lids.
Seals and lids.
And medical stuff, like IV bags, tubing. That's still a place you might find it, particularly outside the EU or with older stock.
What about things like CPAP machines? People use that tubing every night.
Good question. The engineers suggested that major brands selling into Europe are probably DEHP free now because of the rules, but they warned about maybe cheaper, unbranded options. You might want to be more careful there.
Right. So the key is it's mainly linked to flexible PVC, not all plastics.
That seems to be the main takeaway for DEHP specifically, yes.
Okay. But even if it's mainly flexible PVC, phthalates in general are still pretty common, you said. Beyond just DEHP, where else are they lurking?
Oh, yeah. They're useful chemicals for manufacturers. We said flexibility,
Right.
but they also help fragrances stick around longer.
So perfumes, lotions.
Exactly. Perfumes often just list fragrance phthalates could be hiding there.
Yeah.
Nail polish, other cosmetics, shampoos too.
Where else?
Well, plastic food and beverage containers, definitely some types. Plastic wrap, cling film, the linings inside some food cans.
Can linings. Didn't know that. Toys, too, though there are regulations, especially for newer ones. But older toys, or maybe some imported ones, could still be an issue. Then you've got things like vinyl flooring, adhesives, inks, paints. Some types use them. Even car upholstery, coated fabrics. If it involves PVC, it's a possibility.
Wow. It's a long list. It feels like they're almost unavoidable.
They are quite pervasive, yeah.
And it's not just us adults being exposed, is it? You mentioned exposure can start really early.
That's a really crucial point. There was a study, quite influential, by the Environmental Working Group. They found, on average, about 200 industrial chemicals in newborn babies' umbilical cord blood.
200. Good grief.
Yeah, and that included ingredients from consumer products, like phthalates. So exposure can absolutely start before birth. Phthalates can cross the placenta.
Affecting the fetus?
Potentially, yes. And we even see them in our food supply. Another study, this one in Albany, New York, found DEHP in 74% of the foods they tested.
74%?
Yeah.
In food?
Yep. Pork had the highest concentration in that particular study. Okay, this is concerning. Let's connect it back to the heart disease link. How are these chemicals actually doing the damage? You mentioned endocrine disruption and inflammation.
Right. So phthalates are pretty well-known endocrine disruptors.
Meaning they mess with hormones.
Exactly. Your endocrine system is your body's hormone network, right? Controlling metabolism, growth, reproduction, all sorts. These chemicals can interfere, mimic hormones, block them, change how much you have.
Which could cause problems anywhere in the body, really.
It could. Research has linked them to reproductive issues, problems in pregnancy, birth defects. But looking specifically at the cardiovascular system,
Yeah.
DEHP exposure seems to trigger an immune response, specifically inflammation in the walls of heart arteries.
Inflammation, like irritation inside the blood vessels?
Kinda, yeah, chronic inflammation. And over time, that irritation can contribute to plaque buildup, hardening of the arteries,
Right.
increasing the risk of heart attack or stroke.
Okay, that makes sense. What about other effects?
Well, we also see hints in other studies, like higher levels of certain phthalate breakdown products in men being linked to more DNA damage in sperm. Again, pointing towards that endocrine disruption effect. And thinking back to early exposure, the placenta itself, which is obviously vital for a developing baby, can be harmed by environmental things like phthalates. And some research suggests this early impact could increase the risk of cardiovascular disease much later in life for that child.
So the effects could be delayed by decades,
It's a possibility being investigated. Also, phthalates are fat soluble.
meaning they like fat.
Yeah, they can get stored in our body fat, so they might hang around for a while.
Okay. Knowing all this, it's a bit overwhelming. What can people actually do, realistically, to cut down exposure?
It's the big question, isn't it? The Environmental Working Group, EWG, they have some practical tips.
Like what?
Well, trying to avoid products that actually list phthalates in the ingredients, though that's rare. More commonly, look out for just fragrance. Maybe choose fragrance-free options where you can.
Oh, okay. Check the labels.
Yeah. EWG has tools like their Skin Deep database for cosmetics and a guide to cleaning products, which can help identify safer options. They also have an EWG verified mark now on some products.
Ah, like a seal of approval.
Kinda, yeah. For food, they suggest ditching PVC plastic wrap. You know, the cling film often labeled #3 plastic. Same for #3 containers.
Use glass or stainless steel instead.
Exactly. And definitely don't microwave food in plastic containers. Heat can make chemicals leach out more easily.
Good tip. Anything else?
They also suggest maybe cutting back on fast food.
Because of all the packaging.
Yeah, lots of plastic contact in the prep and packaging. Choosing fresh, unpackaged foods when possible helps. Filtering your drinking water. Even just minimizing dust in your house because phthalates can cling to dust particles.
Dusting and vacuuming helps?
Apparently so.
Ah,
Choosing natural materials for furniture, floors, and the simple stuff, washing your hands frequently, especially before eating.
those all sound doable, small changes. But what about the bigger picture? Regulations? Are governments doing enough?
Well, there are regulations, but it's a patchwork. The European Union is generally stricter. Their REACH system restricts several phthalates, including DEHP and things like cosmetics, toys, electronics.
Okay. What about the US?
The U.S. banned some specific phthalates in kids' toys and products back in 2008 under the CPSIA law.
Just for kids stuff, though.
Primarily, yes, for those specific phthalates. Other countries, Canada, Japan, Brazil, Australia, they have their own restrictions too, often similar.
But it sounds like there are still gaps.
Oh, definitely. There's ongoing debate, industry pushback on some bans, and you still have issues with loopholes or older products still in circulation, or maybe imported goods that don't meet local standards.
So, not a perfect system.
Far from it. Many consumer groups and health advocates are pushing for much stronger rules, phasing out the most harmful phthalates altogether, demanding more transparency on labels so you know what's in there, and just funding more research.
Is industry responding at all? Finding alternatives?
Some are. There's mention of companies like Apple exploring different materials like thermoplastic elastomers, TPEs, perhaps to replace PVC in cables and things. So there is some movement towards alternatives.
Okay, so let's try and sum this up. This link between phthalates, especially DEHP, and heart disease. It seems like a serious concern, backed by some significant, if still developing, research.
I think that's fair, yes. A potential link worth taking seriously.
And these chemicals are, well, they're basically everywhere, hidden in everyday products.
Very widespread, often under the radar.
And the harm seems to come from messing with our hormones' endocrine disruption and causing inflammation, particularly in blood vessels.
Those seem to be key mechanisms, yeah.
We can take steps ourselves to reduce exposure, checking labels, changing food storage habits, filtering water, even dusting.
Individual actions can definitely help lower your personal burden, absolutely.
But it feels like for a bigger impact, we probably need stronger regulations, more transparency for manufacturers.
That seems to be the growing consensus among health advocates, yes. It's tough to shop your way out of this problem entirely.
Right. So while completely avoiding phthalate seems pretty much impossible right now.
Yeah, very challenging.
Just being aware, knowing where they hide, and making some informed swaps can make a difference.
Awareness is definitely the first step.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with something to think about, doesn't it? Given how common these chemicals are and the potential long-term effects, what other questions should we be asking about the chemical environment we live in? And what's that right balance between what we do as individuals and what we expect governments and companies to do to ensure products are safer? Maybe it's time we all took a closer look at those labels or checked out resources like the EWG, just with a more critical eye.